Oh, hello, and welcome to Dente Rigamortis. I'm Review Cultist, and tonight we have a very special guest.
Oh, hello. I'm Adam from the Roleplaying Exchange, and it's a pleasure to be here.
And we're here to discuss those internet stories, most creepy and most pasta, and be critically silly doing it. And tonight, for our Hobovember episode, we're doing My Uncle's Bizarre Encounter in a U.S. Intelligence Agency on Reddit No Sleep. Yeah, those Reddit No Sleep episode entries. And their long titles.
It is quite a mouthful, and yeah. I appreciate you having me on for this, because this is kind of a conversation that we started at Gen Con this past year, and it kind of been a project ever since then.
Yep, yeah. When I found out that another podcast that I listen to is a fan of my podcast. So... My uncle's bizarre encounter in a U.S. intelligence agency. I'm just gonna say my uncle's bizarre encounter.
That sounds good.
Is by MCDexX, like capital MC D lowercase EX uppercase X on Reddit. Gotta love those internet names.
Yeah, very much so. And I actually encountered this on YouTube. It was on a channel that I can't seem to find at the moment. Listened to the audio, fell in love with the story. It seemed like it would be rich fodder for, a role-playing game. So, had to look it up.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, I'll leave a link if you can find it. I'll leave a link in the description.
Okay, will do.
Cool. And yeah, we are. So it's a story about a hobo. Well, not just about a hobo. It's narrated from an ex U.S. intelligence agent talking to their nephew. Is it nephew or niece? I guess
it's a nephew.
Could be either.
So we have kind of the frame story of a character retelling a story that was told to him by his uncle, who was a member of some U.S. intelligence agency, who is now, I don't know if I'd say convalescing, but he's in his later point of his life in Australia, just living with his sister.
Yeah, because he's been gripped with a terminal disease, lung cancer, I believe. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we're told the story from the nephew how he was told to it. He remembers it as best he can. Yeah. And so it starts off with Bob, which is the uncle. Yeah. Getting taken with his getting taken to another part of the agency with his boss Corky. Yeah. To deal with an agent who's kind of gone a little nuts. Mm-hmm. Paul is what his name is, but the reason why he's gone crazy is because everyone's calling him Paul, and he says that's not his name. Yeah. And it all stemmed from Sorry.
And actually, Corky isn't the boss's name. Nor is Bob. Yeah, so no one has real names here. So at this point,
yeah, those are just really to kind of keep the names concealed, and so because it's a U.S. They're part of a U.S. agency and stuff.
And they even mentioned in the beginning that he can't tell you certain stuff because of it. This occurred just right after the Cold War ended. So late 80s, early 90s, perhaps timestamp. I can't remember my history too well on that.
Yeah, I think it was in 92 or something like that. It was when the Cold War officially ended. But yeah, old habits die hard, so secrecy and secrets and lies. Less on the lies, I guess. Yeah. It turns out that Paul, the reason why he's frustrated is because Paul, everybody's calling him that, but it's not his real name, and it all stemmed from a encounter he had with this homeless person living in an abandoned tenement building that they wanted to demolish. Yeah. He was basically doing a favor for a friend in the FBI, or was it the FBI, or was it just...
It's police force.
Yeah, police force, yeah. To try and scare the guy out, but when he went to go see him, he tried to get him to leave, and the guy said that he said his name, and the homeless guy was like, "No, that's not your name. You're a Paul."
Yeah. And then that was
need to go.
And then that was the end of the encounter there, and it just seemed like, well, I tried, And then when Paul returns back to his daily life, almost immediately he starts noticing little things that are wrong, such as the name on like his office door is changed. The mail that he is receiving is addressed as Paul, and everybody starts calling him Paul, and it just accumulates up into this encounter, well, until he actually has a break and he is being detained in Corky's office, so till they can figure out what to do with him.
Yeah. And Corky's able to calm him down a little bit, leaves, and then they're gonna have to like get him like some psychiatric help because obviously he's gone, he's snapped a little bit.
Yeah.
And then that's supposed to be that. But then I believe, Bob gets a phone call from Corky.
Yeah.
Sometime, like a little bit later, and Corky's at the office one morning, just staring at the pictures, at the photos of all the presidents.
Allow me to interrupt you.
Yeah, sorry.
So he does. You were right the first time. He gets a phone call at night, and it is Corky, and Corky sounding very distraught. He can, like, he's it's a late hour. He even mentions, like, you hear him taking a drag off a cigarette and coughing and saying, "I put these down 24 years ago, but I need them." And you know what? You're right, and I fucked this up. It was.
The office thing is really just kind of a hint at something, because he shrugs it off and like says that nothing's wrong, but there's clearly something wrong.
Yeah.
And then there's a phone call like later that day, or like later that night, or like the next night or something.
I should never doubt you, sir.
It's okay. It's fine. And Corky's on the phone and basically saying like who's the current president right now, or because I think it's the current president that's strange.
Who was the president after Richard Nixon? And then the narrator, Bob, goes through a list, and then when he gets to Reagan, that is
the actor.
The actor. That is when, whatever reserve that Corky has ends up breaking, and he ends up relaying this story of how he remembers it differently. How he remembers it being Jimmy Carter running against George Bush Sr.
Yeah, and Bush's career kind of getting screwed completely over. Mm-hmm. And so it was a different person than Reagan. Is it Reagan or Reagan?
It's Reagan.
Okay, Reagan. Sorry, Canadian.
It's all good, sir.
And so, this all stemmed from the fact that, like, he went to go check out this tenement building, and this guy's, like, seemingly, like, plush, basement, apartment that he has.
Yeah.
And the guy's just sitting there, middle-aged, like a little slow, watching, movies. Some of which have Reagan in it.
Yeah,
I
was going to say, the movies that he was watching where he's watching like a Turner Classic channel, so just like older movies, and he's watching Bonzo. I'm trying to find a name. Do you have that offhand?
I do not.
Yeah, I'll get to it in a second, but it's basically a movie where somebody has a diaper on a monkey raising it up.
Oh yeah. Oh shoot, I can't remember. Bedtime for Bonzo.
Yeah, Bedtime for Bonzo. Yeah. Found it, and that was a movie. It had Ronald Reagan in it, and Ronald Reagan didn't really have such a stellar acting career. And then Corky, reflects on how this man who was in the movie with a monkey in a diaper was the president of the United States.
Yeah, because the hobo, who we don't get a name, I guess it doesn't matter that much.
No.
Says that, that's the president. And it's like, that's going to be the president. And then he goes home, or he leaves, and sure enough, the president is Reagan.
Yeah.
So he's starting to put things together, and like that this guy has some crazy god power that allows him to like bend reality. Or at least like make whatever he says truth.
Yeah.
Like, absolute. And so he has to he's going to go put him down, and hangs up the phone, and Bob, worried that his friend is about to go, ruin his career, breaks traffic laws and regulations to get there in time to try and stop him. And gets down to the basement to see Corky pointing a gun at the hobo.
Yeah.
And basically just, I think like before anything happens, like anything like is really said, the hobo just tells him that like he has to go.
Yeah.
And then you get Corky just kind of...
You get like a little taste of his power. So when he says to Corky, you've got to go, there is like a thrumming kind of buzzing sensation or sound. It almost...
A reverberation in the air kind of thing. Yeah.
And then he can, like, Corky just leaves. He's compelled to.
Yeah. And then I think at this point Bob's like tries to like questioning the guy, like he tries questioning the guy about what he said, like about Corky and stuff like that, and then he gets really frustrated. Like the hobo kind of gets annoyed because he's like trying to watch his shows.
Yeah.
So he just says like, "Don't worry about Corky. Corky doesn't exist."
Yeah.
And that's when the dread kind of drops as like, and then you just see the guy just like book it upstairs to find that Corky's gone, his car's gone. In a panic, he drives to Corky's house, and it's a different family living in the house. And he realizes that Corky's just been wiped from existence.
The house is gone. Everything's gone, and
they even go to the office.
Yeah, a different person.
And it's a different person.
Yeah. And then, do we actually get to where does he immediately go back there, or does he go back the next day? I can't.
I think it's a like a blur. Like he doesn't remember what happened between that and getting there, but he just remembers being back at arriving back at the house or back at the tenement building. I'm just checking right now. Yeah, I don't remember much of the next little while, but my next clear memory was standing in the front of the damned, crumbly old tenement building. Yeah. He sneaks down there, and the guy's sleeping, like a slob. And he tries to wake him up, and then fires a shot over, like at the headboard, to wake him up, and demands that he brings Corky back. And that's when we kind of get another set of the rules to his powers, is that once he says something, it cannot be countermanded or contradicted.
He says, and I quote. Well, here's a passage, and I'll give it to you in my narrator voice. He shrugged. Already. Said he isn't real. No take backsies. If I did, then I'd be making myself a liar. Either I was lying then, or I'd be lying now. He shrugged. Can't do it. And this is my favorite line. I'm going to get to this one here. With horror, I realized what he was saying. Whatever his power was, it meant that he was stating the truth. Anything that wasn't the truth became the truth. But if he had said it, then he fixed truth. He couldn't contradict himself because then he had to be a liar. And it would, I guess, unravel everything that he has done, which is a really unique way of doing this.
Yeah. Like, would it unravel the universe itself, or would it just unravel like just reverse everything he did? Is the thing.
We'll get on to that at the end of the story.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Again, being very, and then he tells Bob he wants to go to sleep and to go away, and grief. In his grief, he just says no. He just states no. And then the guy just like gets angry and starts to say something, but then Bob fires a shot in his chest. Perhaps in his lung.
And it's a weird kind of juxtaposition. I can't even say that word apparently now. Juxtaposition when he shoots him. So when he starts doing that thing the hobo does. He goes, "You shouldn't be here. I don't want you here." And then we get the lead up to the power being used. Like there's the thrumming, humming again. And then you start getting where he's actually getting ready to make a statement. You're not even and then boom, the gun fires. And it mentions, and this is why I say it's kind of bizarre, it says that the hobo's face is frozen in a comical mask. His mouth is a big O. Just for a second, I thought he looked like an inflatable sex doll. And I almost burst out laughing. I don't know.
It's it's like a dark humor to it.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've ever in a real life occasion been in an instance that was almost like life changing, like say a car wreck or something like that.
Oh yeah,
I can remember like spinning on the road when the driver fell asleep. And actually, we all fell asleep in the car going to a concert in Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh.
And when I woke up, I see the surroundings is spinning. And before I could even panic and say, "Oh my God, I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to die," it was like, this is bad. And then, just this detachment, which is one of the things I think that the highlights this little story for me, just the realism to it. You're doing this horrible thing of, killing this otherworldly creature, but at the same time, you're thinking about a sex doll.
Yeah. It's like, it reminds me of it reminds me of that time that I saw that inflatable sex doll. What?
That's for another story.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, I get that. Like you try to, like, your mind tries to cover up the horror with comedy, or like tries to like cover it up with something that isn't horrific.
And then, I'm gonna steal your thunder here because I really want to mention that, like, he starts to say, "You didn't shoot me," and there's a comparison when we talk about this guy in a moment that I want to kind of make with him, but he said it in a childish voice. You didn't shoot me at all. You shot and then we have the final shot where he puts a bullet into his face and his jaw explodes. And we have the death of the hobo. Yep.
Yeah, he just keeps firing shots into him. Mm-hmm. We should I'll just quickly point out that the previous wound, he says, like, you didn't shoot me, so like it actually like goes away.
Yeah.
But then it doesn't matter because he just gets blood splattered all over the place.
And he completely disables the only means that this man has to actually inserting his will over reality, which would have been his mouth.
Yeah, he got rid of the somatic component to be a D&D player for a second. And then Uncle Bob drinks the cold coffee because they were drinking. He had a coffee at the very beginning of the story, and then is drinking that, and then chases it down with some Jim Beam that he's been drinking as well, and talks about like how basically he didn't get any, like, he never got any kind of like repercussions to this.
Yeah.
The hobo and like the whole place basically got covered up, probably through like the government agency.
Yeah.
And the only person that knew that Corky existed was him. And I think he went back and checked the records, and Corky's mom at the time of his birth had a miscarriage.
Yeah, Corky's mother has a miscarriage, and it totally which totally reminds me of that horrible movie with Ashton Kutcher in it, Butterfly Effect.
Oh yeah.
Which,
who could forget that abomination?
It haunts me still to this day.
Well, that was a Twilight Zone or Outer Limits episode, I think, too, wasn't it?
I believe it was. I'm kind of digging back through my high school years of watching the Sci-Fi Channel before it became Giant Snake versus Big Anaconda. And
or Sharknado 5000.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, the qualities went way downhill.
Yeah.
So is there anything... Oh,
yeah, there's the... sorry, then we get the a little bit more, like, basically what happened after the story. After he tells the story, he's basically, like, ready to go to bed. They kind of have a hug moment.
Yeah.
Because of, like, how sad that whole thing was. Mm-hmm. And he still has regret that, like, he misses Corky. Yeah. Because it was, like, one of his friends. And then we get our narrator, the nephew, retailing how Bob basically passed away a few months later, like after suffering a stroke and cancer finally succumbing to him, or he finally succumbing to the cancer.
There's really a lingering horror left here, and I did notice it on my first read, and actually an hour ago when I read this, one last time before we sat down to do this. I want to point out maybe the second or third last paragraph here, but he mentions. Speaking of Bob, he sipped more bourbon. I tried to go back to work, but everything was wrong. I kept misdirecting mail and calling people by the wrong titles, and people were noticing that I wasn't on top of my game. I like that.
Because
how much more damage did this guy do than like?
Well, is it what the guy did to him, or is it just like the overwhelming grief and like revelation of? Like, what the guy was capable of, but also, like, the loss like, how easily this guy was able to just wipe things away.
Yeah.
Or, like, change, like, whole, like, history, basically.
Yeah, it could definitely be both of those. It could be that he's misremembering things, or that have actually changed in that world. Or maybe he is just second-guessing everything. Like, his whole foundation has been uprooted.
Yeah, because that would definitely, like, this is a very traumatic situation.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it would make you definitely be doubting yourself after such a thing.
So this was like one of my first forays into Creepypasta in 2018, and
yeah,
definitely it made an impression on me.
Yeah, I remember you told me about it. I believe at Gen Con.
Yeah, it was Saturday at Gen Con. We were gathering about there.
And I took a look at it afterward, and I was like, "Yep, this is Delta Green. this is prime fodder for that." I've actually like rereading it. I actually have some notes on how you could do it in other systems.
I would love to hear it because I recently ran it in Delta Green. But before we do that, I don't know if I'm breaking protocol on this. Like, do we want to? Is there any kind of summarization that we should do on this?
Yeah, we will. Well, we just did the rundown, so we could do like we can do some like some actual like some thoughts on the story itself before we go into game theorying and scenario craft work.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So grammar inquisitions is something we usually do because people expect it at this point.
Yeah.
But in all honesty, and I'm sure my co-host, my usual co-host could disagree with me, but you know what? They're not here.
Yeah, that's okay.
Apart from a few minor grammar issues I saw, like spaces not being there between two words, or I think the couple of times he says old habits died hard.
Yeah.
I think it should be old habits die hard. Like, I don't know if it needs to be past tense.
Yeah.
But other than that, aside from those, I personally didn't find anything noteworthy wrong with the grammar.
No.
So I didn't trip up over anything.
I noticed a few words that were used like sentence to sentence, like, you know, not like the, and it, but I've just noticed a couple of things that, you know, it just stuck out to me just from somebody who has in the past worked as an English teacher, and I just saw the same words being repeated. So maybe it could have done with the usage of a thesaurus. I think my main complaint, and this is a thing that I feel it was built into the story, was the depiction of the hobo himself.
Okay.
Are you familiar with Faulkner?
I'm not.
His big seminal works are As I Lay Dying, which they made into a film, and The Sound of the Furies. So this is something over here in America that we're like, hey, you need to read American literature, and we haven't been around since 1776, so we don't have like a rich canon. So we just kind of we take what we got. And Faulkner wrote, and you may have actually heard the expression the Faulknerian idiot man-child, which is referring to Faulkner's depiction of people with like special needs, like
Gotcha.
And there was it's kind of the crude wordage in describing him, like the otherworldly thing. He's described as a simpleton, and he's also like an idiot. I'm trying to find the actual words and stuff like that. Which, I mean,
it's like not very PC, I guess.
Not PC, but I can see what they were going for with this, because this is almost like Mythos meets Of Mice and Men so much. So you,
oh God,
like you have this character, which there's at least 2 or 3 times in the story that the narrator, well, Bob, not the narrator, but that Bob refers to this thing as being like, he said, I killed a man once. Well, maybe it was a man. So there's something otherworldly about this antagonist, but he's also described as being very simple and childlike. But I also think that they're using making him a childlike kind of depiction here is also highlighting the evil, like, the creepy Pet Cemetery kind of child thing. Yeah,
like the I think we actually said, I think we brought that up like off recording, that like his power like almost seemed like it stemmed from like something like Pet Cemetery-esque kind of thing, like like it could just be that like his like the childlike like man-child likeness could just be like a naivety that he has, like he just is not aware of the like he's just not like aware of the repercussions, or like doesn't see the world like the rest of us. Like he just sees it like this. It's just a game to him, or it's just a story. It's just like a narrative to him.
Yeah, it's no different than the TV that the character is always depicted as watching. Like he's not even watching like current television. He's watching an old movie from the black and white era where Ronald Reagan's with a monkey. Like it's nothing, gritty or hard paced or something like that. Which for me is kind of great. I'm glad he was watching these little folksy TV shows like The Waltons or something like that, as opposed to, CSI Special Victims Unit or some like grimdark thing like that.
Or, I think we brought this up again earlier, but what if we watched X-Files, and that's why Delta Green exists?
Oh yeah. Like, oh God, wouldn't that be great that he is the actual pivot point for everything?
Like there's your dark revelation from for your Delta Green game. It's just you see he was watching X-Files, and some of those things like, I remember like a character. I remember one of our agents was like this. Oh.
Have you noticed in this that there is a huge thing with identity within this story?
Yeah, like trying to like falsehoods and stuff like that. Because like we have the names that we are given, but they are not their actual names because of ambiguity, or there's probably another word for that. But just to like hide their names so that people don't like go looking or anything like that, and to protect them. And then there's also like the name changing and altering of reality in the actual story.
Yeah. And we mentioned this a little bit earlier. Like we have this wiping of identities. Like, narrator is his name's never given. Bob has a different name. Yeah. And this is even before we actually jump into the second part of the story, which is Bob retelling it. Then you have Paul, who is not Paul. And then you have Corky, who Bob changes the name of. And
and then we never get a name for the hobo. And then even like some of the names they do they mention like who Corky gets replaced with, or
no? That's the greatest part about this. This is almost like for those of you listening at home, I want to apologize. I went to college to be an English teacher, so I have been shoved literary theory and so forth for quite some time, but the whole story is subjective, and the narrator's telling you his, and then you got the subjectivity from Bob, and you just had this from everyone involved in the story that is of consequence, which would be Bob, narrator, and the hobo. They're changing the names, they're changing the facts. There's this meta level on this here that I just really dig.
Nice. Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. By all means, when it comes to like theorizing, and from your background, like by all means, like talk away about that, because I find that really interesting. I just really dig the meta commentary, I guess, of it as well. Mm-hmm. Actually, I do have a couple of my actual thoughts are kind of tied to a social commentary, I think, on this story. Oh. Cause, so like when Bob is like reflecting about like, how he heard like a whoosh, or like when, he's talking to Corky, and saying that like, how the guy said that like the president was going to be, Reagan, the actor. I just about like burst out laughing. No way a washed up old actor could be president of the United States, right? Right? Oh, Jesus. That's the line. And my comment is like, I'm pretty sure, like, I've heard this story before, like, these jokes before about Ronald Reagan, or Reagan. I think, like, Back to the Future does it. Like, Reagan, the actor? Who's the second, like, who's the vice president? Like, and then, like, says some other name. I can't remember it, unfortunately. I'm not that much of a geek to know the exact, like, every word verbatim in that movie. But yeah, and then my comment after that was like, it's like, I mean, like who, like, oh yeah, if actor, like that's like, how can a washed up actor be like president? How can a business mogul become president? But how could that happen? Oh, maybe there's another god hobo nearby. Yeah. But then later in the story, there's this quote: "The basement really was luxurious, but a bit tacky, like a Trump hotel kind of thing." Oh. When did this come out? August 2016? okay, carry on. Yeah, it's just like there's meta bits in the story, like that we were like, going on earlier about like the names changing and like the subjective viewpoints in the story.
Yeah.
And then there's the social commentary that may have had an inkling in the story, and maybe that's not the case, but it's a little too close.
Yeah, here's something you missed, but it's like, of course, this is like you'd have to kind of have American history to pick this up. Let me read the passage. This is around the 5th page of it. It says, now this is after we're discussing how Reagan is president. I'm going to kill him. The hobo, I mean, not Reagan. What he can do would be dangerous even in responsible hands, but there's something really broken inside of him. Reagan was there was an assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan in the 80s.
Oh, really?
By a man who was wanting, I think his name was John Hinckley. There is a movie based on it, and you have Jared Leto playing the would-be assassin. I may be getting the name of the assassin wrong, but yeah, Reagan was shot in the 80s by a man who was trying to prove his love to Jodie Foster, I believe, by killing the president. So
okay.
The fact that, I'm going to kill Reagan, and then, the fact that Reagan, there was an assassination attempt made on his life, like, at least for me, like if I were wanting to make this like a creepy world and stuff like that, which is pretty creepy, but yeah. I was like, I wonder if that other guy, like, maybe there was a hobo back then.
Yeah. Just, again, these god hobos.
Oh, God. They're everywhere. I mean, you can't turn around without running into one. And you got this, going back to what you were talking about earlier, there's this horror in this thing that your identity is malleable to an extent, like the way people see you is malleable. And the horror is of losing yourself, losing your identity. And, maybe even your perception of reality as it is. Like, after this story ends, you even have the narrator's, or Bob, his life just goes down the drain. He's getting stuff messed up and things like that. And as far as like...
It's almost like I guess he becomes like an expat, like after he leaves the agency, or...
Yeah.
Is that,
or at least he
like
goes
what that is?
To Australia to spend the time with his remaining family. Also,
yeah,
I like how they use the more English spelling of words in here. We were critiquing like the negatives. I like the fact that we have an Australian narrator who is spelling like color with a U in it, and things like
that's
that.
Also how we do it up here. But I think that's the. It's not imperial. It's the Commonwealth, I think, way of doing it.
Yeah. The
Queen's English.
But it was immersive to me. Just I was like, that's not how we spell that, but
Yeah. So yeah, after the whole social commentary thing, there's also the So there's a quote where it's what he can do. Yeah, you actually mentioned it. What he can do is dangerous, even in the most responsible hands. But there's something really broken inside of him. Maybe nobody is meant to have a power like this, and it's broken his mind. And it got me wondering, like, did this man always have this power, or was he like perhaps a simpleton, or like that mentality? If that is the case of it, was that before, or after he gained the powers, or perhaps was he a cultist to some greater force and went that way when he received his gift? Kind of like in like a Call of Cthulhu or Delta Green game, like or the idea of like cultists like gaining like power and then like basically going even more mad, or like just snapping in like mentally in a way.
Yeah. Well, the only hypothesizing that the story does on this matter is saying that someone said it looked like he was dropped on his head as a child.
Yeah, which. Yeah, it doesn't it doesn't really isn't very favorable to those to people like that have those unfortunate like issues. But I mean, it's also fiction.
Yeah, and
a horror story.
Yeah, so. And I wouldn't even hypothesize to say that the narrator, would not narrator, but the writer would even harbor these kind of feelings. It's just the way that these characters are interacting with it. I mean, there's something broken about each one of them, really. Yeah, exactly. Like, and they're all changed by these events.
like not just like, oh, like no, like the like Reagan's the actor or the president. What the hell? But like they're all like shaken like to their core basically by what happens to them like with this power. Yeah. So,
there was something interesting. Go ahead.
Sorry. Oh, I was just saying. There's also like this reminded me of the Treehouse of Horrors segment from Simpsons and. The movie or the episode it was based on from the Twilight Zone, It's a Good Life.
Yeah.
But I knew it more from The Simpsons, where like Bart can change reality with God powers,
yeah,
or like psychic abilities and stuff. It's an idea that isn't like I don't think it's like utilized a lot. Like it's like those 2 or 3 like sources I think are the only like times I ever really see that idea kind of used.
Yeah, and some of it's even comedy. Like, if you see some film like My Name is Bruce or something like that, where the character is given godlike abilities, it's usually not done in this horror aspect, and it's usually like, oh, we're going to teach you a life lesson, like, love was at home the whole time, or, blah, 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 blah kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, Bruce Almighty, that one's like, basically take it the other way, where it's not like terrifying, it's just like kind of comedic, except for when he does terrifying things with it.
Yeah.
Like, bring the moon closer to have a romantic night. And the
Twilight Zone version of Life is Good, or what was it called again?
It's called A Life, or I had it right here. It's a Good Life.
It's a Good Life. It involves like a woman who is traveling the countryside and ends up at this farmhouse, and this godlike child with similar abilities is just like has a family that's not even really, I don't know I think there may actually be his family, but he has them hostage to his every whim, and
they're basically slaves to him because like, and much like how the hobo in this one like has that luxurious plush like basement apartment.
Yeah.
Like he wants things and they appear, or they have to like follow him, otherwise he could like wipe them from existence.
Yeah.
And actually, apparently, when they redid the Twilight, or when they brought back the Twilight Zone, it's still a Good Life.
Yeah.
Episode where it's not, it's the boy from the first episode, grown up. In fact, I think they even use the same actors, and it's his daughter now that's exhibiting the same kind of powers.
Ooh, I haven't seen that one.
Yeah. But yeah, I was just like really commenting on like the fact that like it's one of those ideas that doesn't get a whole lot of use, but it like there are prominent examples of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was nice to see another story that tackles it.
There was this really weird thing I think we've also kind of glossed over a moment ago, but I noticed in the beginning of this story, and you see it at the end as well. And let me pull up my notes. Okay. So we have this, all right, at the beginning of the story, the uncle is eating ice cream, drinking champagne. And, it's, described, he has like a big bowl of ice cream. Then the narrator sits across from him. And, with a sly smile, the uncle slides a tub of ice cream across the table with a spoon sticking out of it like an antenna. All right. So, think mouth for a moment. Next paragraph, you go, like when the guy starts eating the ice cream, he goes, I put my mouth to better use, eating a spoonful of ice cream and crunching on a piece of macadamia nut. And then he actually kind of starts choking on it. So like an antenna is used, and this is where I kind of was reaching, I feel like, but an antenna, used to transmit or broadcast. So you literally have like our narrator taken this man's story or means of communication and ingesting it in sorts. So you had the mouth. The hobo, he speaks, and what he says becomes gospel, so to speak. And so you have that mouth deal. And then when the hobo is finally silenced by being shot in the mouth.
Yeah.
At the end.
And then later on when we get the description that, and then even like take that way, the way the hobo is shot does kind of is represented with how the uncle dies, or like how he like lives his last couple of days.
Yeah,
because
he has lung cancer. He's shot in the chest, like the hobo's shot in the chest, but
and then the hobo is shot in the mouth, and before he succumbs to the cancer, he suffers a stroke like a month before. which renders him unable to speak at all.
Yeah.
Like the hobo is rendered speechless.
So there's this whole duality here, and that I wasn't expecting this on something I found on a Reddit page. Primarily,
you'd be surprised with creepypasta sometimes. Sometimes there's some really thought provoking ones. Sometimes, and then other times it's here's my OC killer character or my OC monster.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's ones that really do make you think. Actually, another good one is that wasn't my husband sleeping next to me last night.
Yeah, you posted that one maybe a couple weeks ago or a month or two.
We posted it on. We had it on our Patreon episode because my two co-hosts have been doing a special Patreon episode series where they touch on the stories that they didn't do beforehand.
Yeah.
But that was when me and Dr. Leviathan did think in the first 30 episodes of the show. So it's one of the older ones. But yeah, for this one, I didn't even think about the antenna until you mentioned it with the that descriptor. And yeah, the narrator is basically the vessel or the conduit for the story being told, much like an antenna.
Which this is a really cool kind of setup too, if you want to think about how horror goes, because this is not. I mean, this is kind of framed like H.P. Lovecraft would frame how he framed Call of Cthulhu.
Call of Cthulhu, yeah.
Which you got
with the uncle telling the nephew.
Yeah, and then we, in fact, as people listening to the story, are actually brought in to the narrative as well, which is cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So it's basically all just coming full circle.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of the rest of my stuff is some ideas for for game scenario stuff. Because
I'm exhausted.
Generally, I enjoyed the read because, like we said, it is fairly thought provoking, and you really do get some dread. Even though you know that something bad happens to Corky, when the guy says that he's gone, and he you know that when he says that, that's true. That means it changed reality, and you're just oh shit. And then Bob runs outside, but you already, as a reader, we already know what's happening.
Yeah.
And Bob's just going through the motions, and it's still kind of terrible and dreadful, in terms of the horror aspect of it, and I like that.
Yeah.
Even though we know what's coming, it's still a good ride.
And is it any less? Is his friendship with Corky any less real now because Corky never existed? Kind of deal.
Yeah, exactly. He may be he's the only one who knows it, but he still has all of those memories of with Corky and stuff. So is he any less real? Aside from the fact that he's been ripped from the timeline.
And maybe this is, if we're going to take one positive, uplifting thing from this story and apply it to our daily lives, because chicken soup for the soul kind of thing like that. It's when people pass on in our lives or are no longer a part of them in some shape, form, or fashion, it is kind of our duty, to keep them alive in our memory and in our hearts, so to speak, so that they keep existing.
Yeah, exactly. You still have those memories. Even when a grandparent or somebody or an uncle dies, you still have the good memories as well as the bad. But you can cherish the good memories.
Yeah.
To keep yourself up and don't remember them. Our saying, one family saying we have up here is, or at least for me, is don't when my grandmother was basically passing away. It'd been a couple. She was suffering from Alzheimer's for several months before she finally went. I don't remember her like she was then. I remember her years prior because that was when she was the most alive.
Yeah.
And I choose to remember her for that, not
what they went through. Yeah, it's just
exactly because the person was my grandmother on the bed there, but it wasn't my grandmother.
Yeah,
it was the person years before was more my grandmother.
And they can take can take that person from us, but they can't take what we hold of them in us.
Yeah. And on that cheery note, an uplifting note, let's go into some because you made you were saying that you were planning on using this for an RPG scenario for Roleplaying Exchange.
Yeah,
it's Roleplaying Exchange, right?
Yeah, Roleplaying Exchange.
Okay, yeah.
And that was basically the premise of our conversation. So when I ran into you at Gen Con, I had seen you in passing. We had been in the same conversations, but I'm honestly really glad that we sat down and had that conversation. I left that conversation with a new friend, and I was talking about how I wanted to use this Creepypasta as fodder for a Delta Green game, which is and the creators of Delta Green would probably, they would very much frown upon my description, but I would give you the reference point if you're not familiar with Delta Green, is that it is kind of a smash up of Cthulhu and the X-Files, despite the fact that Delta Green existed before the X-Files did. But
because it was like 1991 or something like that, right? Or was it?
Yeah,
it was developed like really early 90s. Sorry, you have the more information. Sorry.
No, I really don't. I just act like I do. But yeah, it was the early 90s when they did that. I think some of them may have even still been in college at the time. So I took this basic scenario seed of what if somebody had the power to, like, whatever they say, changes reality around them. So I did a little bit of quick research, and I thought, well, the god and the Cthulhu mythos that would probably work best with would be Azathoth. So that was my starting point. Now, since we've had that conversation, I have created and ran this playtest scenario. I'm going to try to launch it about the same time that you post this episode. So if you're listening to one, would like to check out the other, please come over to the Roleplaying Exchange. And
the link is in the description below.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And I had mixed feelings about how it all went, but I would just kind of, would it be okay if I gave you like a general kind of setup of how I use this information to craft a game?
Yeah, go for it. I will actually preface this, like, if you don't want, I guess, spoilers for the game, go check out the game first.
We'll wait.
Pause right now. Yeah, pause now. We'll wait. All right.
All right. So, so basically, the way I set it up is, I was thinking back to how, like, what would be a nice, scary introduction. And the story itself, the introduction is Paul. Well, once you get the introduction to Bob's story, is Paul is loss of identity. So I was thinking, what would be a cool way that I could do this? And I don't know have you seen these videos on YouTube where a parent is returning back from their service over in Afghanistan or Iraq or wherever, and they're reunited with their child at.
And the child doesn't quite remember them, or they're kind of alienated from the.
Well, that's what I ended up doing. But I took the idea of just like they met at a school assembly, and the mother has returned from war, and it's like, oh, mommy, like nice touching thing that you see on Facebook and YouTube, and I did just what you said. I just made it to where this person was not remembered by their child as going away to war, and in fact they were remembered as abandoning them and their father. And so it was that was the idea.
I definitely remember. Actually, it's weird that you say that, because that's kind of what happens in Alien vs Predator Requiem. with the mother coming back from the war, and like the daughter like being estranged to the mother, like not at like they like, I guess because it's like so much time had passed, like, or like so many months had passed, like since their service, like the daughter is like just kind of very cold to the mother. At first, not to belittle that situation with a really bad movie.
No, but it gives it a good
it's
reference point. Yeah. Now, trying to make like this wouldn't be something that would fall on the radar of a conspiracy government agency, so. I actually made the woman who returns home and like is not acknowledged by her child anymore as being a member of Delta Green. So even though her records of armed service duty and her existence in the Delta Green organization were stricken, she still had information on the agency, and I had the operatives in this game go out to investigate it, which through just trying to tie everything up together, I kind of framed it whereas they investigated the YouTube channel, and if you go far enough down in the beginning, it's message like, oh, that's sweet, yay, that's so precious, your daughter's lucky to have you, thank you for your service, to flipping a light switch and it just turning like violently negative about her, about stolen valor and things like that. And they end up in this scenario tracing it down to West Union, Ohio, which I usually set all my Delta Green games in Ohio just because my good friend Greg from Technical Difficulties is from Ohio and I live in Kentucky, and I'm kind of an asshole, but that's the only way I know how to show my love.
Nice.
Love you, Greg. But so yeah, that's how I kind of base this whole deal. And I won't say too awful much about this, but I do want to point out something in the story on a reread that really it's must have affected me on a subconscious level that I didn't realize. Like by the time I ran this game, or created this scenario and ran this game, I had forgot about the mention of Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But I thought to myself, as being this nice little leftist podcaster in the Appalachian Mountains of Kentucky, like, wouldn't it be really terrifying if the President of the United States was decided by somebody who watched Fox News or some crazy, very right-wing news outlet? And yeah, so I have... I probably, and those who have listened to the scenario kind of pick up on this, I probably shouldn't have went too heavy with that because it became a bigger focus of that game than I wanted it to be. But yeah, I had basically this simpleton character with these godlike powers that was kind of the result of a cultish experiment for Azathoth, was befriended by a very conservative right-wing political believer kind of deal like that, and she starts her beliefs start bleeding over to this guy. So
God.
I didn't want to make the hobo character like bad necessarily. I wanted to give my players an option of not lineating him, to use the Of Mice and Men kind of reference.
Yeah, because I mean, he is in the story. He's not entirely unsympathetic, because like he's played off as
he's imposed upon by people. They want him out of his house. Like if he had been left to his own devices, I mean, he still would have messed stuff up, but he wasn't like malicious in his actions, I guess. Yeah,
not until he got angry, and then really that's just like that's something like any human would have, like vindictiveness, or like, in his case, it's just kind of like a childlike carelessness.
Now, one thing that I did very weird in this game, but I kind of was thinking back, I'm like, all right, good old, like, quote unquote, wholesome American values, bootstrapped, blah, 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 the good old days kind of like mentality I was approaching. It's like, what symbolizes that? So in my game, I actually start tying in are you familiar with the Andy Griffith Show?
Yes.
So
that I'm familiar with.
So I kind of end up doing like this Andy Griffith Show Pleasantville thing.
Oh, God.
So, I don't, like, for those of you who may want to turn around and listen to it, I made some decisions. If you would like to voice, what I could have done better, like constructive feedback, always available. If you listen to the episode, just leave a comment. But so I kind of went a little off reservation and brought in Andy Griffith and Barney Five and Aunt Bee and all those nice, lovely characters.
The actual characters.
The actual characters.
Nice.
So, and that's the horror right there.
Yeah. I was actually thinking earlier when you were saying about the person returning, like the agent, like the one that like realized that like things are wrong thing. If you want to be really dark for Delta Green, make that a vignette with a bond.
Yeah.
And have the bond be the affected person.
Oh.
Or the bond that's like the bond that has the issue. So basically like crush that bond right off the hop.
God, you dark, beautiful bastard, you. Yes, that's great. Like, see, and this is like, I will go ahead and admit, like, when I started Roleplaying Exchange, going on almost 3 years ago, it was really, I had not ever ran a game.
Yeah.
This is just, I want to join this big podcasting conversation. And as I have ran Delta Green and games like that, I realized that it's all about how you frame it. And I really like that framing device right there of crushing a bond, because I had the ops actually meet with a handler, and I made it an official mission. And then I think that's a problem with these type of games where there's cell phones and TACnet and things like that. When you allow them access to other resources, it affects the way that they make decisions in a way that you don't want it to go for the whole horror aspect. So yeah, if it was a personal vendetta, this is off the books kind of thing, would have been a whole lot better.
Just do like the it's set in the modern, but they're going cowboy because this time it's personal.
Yeah.
And for, I guess, the audience, or for people who not know, for Delta Green, cowboy is basically the illegal conspiracy of Delta Green versus the, I do in quotes, legit conspiracy of Delta Green.
Which is
like the guys that don't have funding from a government, they're actually just doing this by shirking some money, some funds from everywhere to get what they need.
Yeah, and there's no safety net. There's no one to turn back to. You're not working with the Department of Defense or whatever kind of deal. And
exactly. Yeah.
Even I would take your suggestion even further and say, if you could do a game like this in a scenario, if a character's been killed, bring them back, but only they remember what previously happened, and the rest of the characters and the player characters do not remember them. And then you kind of frame it around that. So, maybe they didn't die. Maybe they were just rewritten in this line of history.
Yeah. I also, if you wanted to have the handler briefing, have the handler be the one that realizes, as he gets into the meeting, he realizes all of his information is wrong. And he starts going nuts there. And then basically, have the debriefing go wrong.
See, everything you do sounds better than what I did.
It's just suggestions, room for improvement.
Oh, definitely. I love it, man. I will definitely take these comments into consideration.
Also, I'm not going to lie. Now that you've kind of said that you legit bring fictional characters into reality in the game, I definitely want to watch it more, listen to it more, because I'm a sucker for that kind of meta textual stuff.
And in the Twilight Zone episode, I drew an influence from it because actually a girl, the main character's sister, she angers him, and he places her in a cartoon where I think it's been years, but I think she was devoured by a gigantic Tom and Jerry style cat.
Oh God.
Yeah, it gets fucking dark when you have a kid doing it.
Yeah. Jesus. Is there anything else about the scenario, or?
Yeah, that's about it. I don't want to say too much in case people didn't listen to our disclaimer, but all in all, I enjoyed what I did, and I learned quite a bit from it. I will still, when I rewrite this scenario and try to run it for a different group, I will definitely stick with the central core concept that was presented in this creepypasta of someone with childlike innocence, ? Being blessed with this godlike ability, and then so I'll redo a couple of things, but probably add your suggestions, actually.
Awesome. Another idea just came to me, rather than Azathoth, and we're both familiar with one Caleb Stokes,
yes,
from Heaven on Games. Very dark scenarios. Go check out Red Markets, buy his book.
I just had a new supplement, Le Corbusier, kind of dating this a little bit, but it just released beginning of November.
Yep. And one of his first things he did was he put out a Cthulhu or systems free scenarios of horror in the Great Depression. And one of the creatures that stands out to me in that is Not-Is.
That was a good one.
Literally the reality bending creature itself, the thing that is and is not. And I just think of what if rather than Azathoth, have Not-Is as the and basically the character that is has the powers is basically just a vessel in some ritual or cult activity. Or maybe just he was born bonded to Not-Is, actually, to even borrow some more stuff from Arc Dream with add Monster and Other Childish Things into Delta Green, where the character has a monster friend who is bonded to him and not aware of it. So Not-Is is bonded to this guy, or this it could be a child, it could be an older character, and just like be kind of oblivious to the repercussions that his monster is basically doing, like making everything he states as truth and fact.
Oh yeah, and then you get to like the whole moral dilemma of, he's essentially innocent, but do I put him down?
Exactly, yeah. Like his only crime is that he's been involuntarily, or like through birth, or through some birthright, or through some mishap or something, like this outer creature doing something. He's been linked to this power, basically.
Yeah.
But like, can you put? I actually remember Delta Green's Adam Scott Glancy referencing like them having to put down a Carrie-esque character, and they had to roll sand to like put a pillow over her face to like suffocate her.
Oh Lord!
Like that kind of morality kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, it could go really dark, is what we're saying.
Yeah, there's no right answers. It's just like the greater good kind of thing like that.
Yeah.
You also mentioned you had a couple of other games you were thinking of, like in this kind of scenario with.
Yep. So two things kind of came up while I was reading the story. The first one was actually I guess three ones if you include Unknown Armies, because I feel like I'm not 100% familiar with Unknown Armies. I've just listened to a couple of actual plays, but based on what I've heard of that, you could definitely like convert this to that kind of system.
Yeah.
Even have that like kind of be like the seed to when like characters, like maybe like the characters gain powers because this guy states they have powers, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because that's,
and that game is kind of built with like avatars and stuff like that. You could even take like more of a religious aspect and like the prayer and stuff like that. Yeah. And like, the things that this person prays for comes true.
Yeah.
But, make it a monkey paw-ish, like, oh, yep, it came true, all right. They're back.
Yep. They're not bad, but sometimes dead is better. Again, to quote Pet Sematary. And then even Arcdream's godlike setting, with like, again, federal agents and like the army, using being like superhero-esque beings with like god tier abilities. It's basically the same kind of setup. Like basically the FBI agents are trying to like stop this supervillain or like this hapless superhero who has the ability to change like reality.
Yeah.
And then the other one I had was Time Watch from Pelgrane Press.
I had Time Watch too. I want to hear what you got for me.
Really, it's just like, so, I mean, the game itself is kind of has a built-in thing for this because there's chronological horror campaign frames where you can like basically just have horror like that has to do with time travel and issues. And in the campaign there is like the reason nobody goes back and kills Hitler is because Time Watch stops them. So basically just have Time Watch just trying to deal with like they can never try make this guy a little bit more like cagey in terms of like how like he's changing reality. So you have to go back in time and fix the problems, and you're also trying to hunt down this guy.
Yeah. And
but for some reason, like he's like
that obvious too. Like you're fixing this problem, and then as you keep plugging these holes, so to speak, like the thread develops that you can follow back to that guy.
Yeah, like maybe like that's the campaign. Like as like the campaign's going through, you guys are repairing paradoxes or inconsistencies in the time stream, and you're like, what is causing these? And you're just trying, basically you're just CSIing and like trying to figure out where is the connection here, and then you slowly start realizing that there's this guy in the background that's just always there.
Yeah.
Or just like, yeah, like even like, but like started off like really obscure.
Yeah.
And then just bring him a little bit more and more, like make him like screw up a few times, or maybe not even screw up, but like have him just like inadvertently like flub up like his, concealment in the scenario. And have him like be like basically he's undetectable through their like means, so they have to do it the old-fashioned way kind of thing.
Yeah, like
they have to go do some actual detective work, not use a fancy tricorder and oh, there's the time anomaly. That's the one thing I've started noticing with that game is oh yeah, there's just hand wave it with you got time stuff. You got time devices.
Oh, it's pulpy as fuck, but I love it. This is one of my favorite games to run.
We actually ran one on Halloween with Time Watch. It'll be probably posted for the Patreons this month.
So,
where they ended up.
I was going to say, I am definitely going to be checking out this game.
Cool. Yeah, they ended up, I gave them a choice of either going hunting for something in the real world or going to the place where the thing was from to do some exotic sample recovery, i.e., organ smuggling from an extra-dimensional space. Mm-hmm. And they chose the extra-dimensional organ smuggling.
Like you do.
And basically that was where it was either going to be a Time Watch game or it was going to be a Night's Black Agents game with Time Watch characters. Ooh. And it ended up being a Time Watch game primarily because they had to go through a portal and stuff to another reality.
Oh Lord, I had
very silly game.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just saying it was a very silly game. I tried to put horror into it, but my group, they were based on the reality they were going into, silly shenanigans and laughter. It wasn't ever. It was bound to happen.
Oh yeah,
is what I'm trying to say.
And that's the problem I have running horror games. Like I can do action, but just trying to make something scary. It usually either the banter at the table or just the way things go, it kind of always goes bonkers. The Time Watch idea that I had thinking about this is, though I do want to clear something up with Time Watch. If you go back in time to assassinate Hitler and stop World War II, then regardless of what you do, worldwide nuclear war breaks out in the 1950s.
So just stop. So don't do it.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah.
And by the way, you can't go back and stop the assassination of JFK because everyone who goes back in time to try to assassinate JFK comes back irreversibly mad for some reason, and we don't know why. So,
maybe it's because of a god hobo.
Oh God, it all ties in.
Because remember, his thing is like as long as he states things as fact, he just says this person has to die, and everything he says is truth. So he can't countermand himself, and neither can anybody else. So they just go nuts.
Now I have another scenario where you just basically are finding Time Watch agents that are just coming back from a mission completely batshit crazy, and you've got to go into it from an indirect route. And not to go in and directly fix the problem, but you encounter the hobo more organically, I guess you could say. But
yeah,
the idea that I like with Time Watch, what I love about it is you just look at real historical things. There's these little oddities, and just what if? So my idea of if I were going to use something like this is in real life, Vice President Al Gore was roommates in college with Tommy Lee Jones from Men in Black and, the actor, right?
Yeah.
So what I'm thinking is, what if somebody who is a fan of either of those men, from the future, more or less planted a device on this character and tried to right every wrong that ever was done against him. So say, for example, Al Gore did something, screwed Tommy Lee Jones over. Well, boom, all of a sudden Time Watch picks up that Al Gore was not the vice president of Bill Clinton. And, then, how are we going to track it back to Tommy Lee Jones? And then, just pick a couple other people from Tommy Lee Jones's life and say, well, what happened if this didn't happen? And then it would ultimately lead you back to Tommy Lee, which would then lead you back to the rogue.
The obsessive fan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually a way to do it without just having a simpleton character, because they're just it's a different kind of, I guess, issue that the character has.
Yeah,
that doesn't alienate that group of people that have those issues.
Maybe it was somebody that was just a fan and didn't realize that they were destroying everything else. They're not killing Al Gore. They are just they do one thing to get back at him, to avenge poor little Tommy, and then that had repercussions that trickle down the line and end up with him not being in this position that he is in our time stream. So you could make it the childlike character, it's the innocence, and instead of playing it up as a horror aspect, you just you can just they're just innocuous mistakes that just have far wide-reaching consequences.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that was it, right?
Yep, that's all I got.
Cool. When you brought this one up and I read it, I was like, oh, this is perfect for Hobovember because we've done Robovember for like 2 years now, or 2 or 3 years, and we've run out of kind of stories that really have to do with like robots.
Yeah.
Ironically enough, or like strangely enough, you'd think there'd be more out there, but and then real life kind of thing happened where near where I actually work, or near where I work, there was hobo camp.
Ooh.
That like a little commune had started, and like we'd see fire like in the woods behind our parking lot, and we'd see like fires at night, and we'd hear chanting and rabble going on. And my mind, again, being Cthulhu infested with horror and stuff like that, just thinks like the worst. And just like, there's a straight up like hobo cult going on out there. Why am I not writing this creepypasta?
Yeah.
And yeah, like basically like, it was just like, oh, we should, and like Hobovember, like that works thematically, or that works, alliteratively, kind of.
Yeah.
We'll do that. But then there's you try to find like stories that have to do with like a homeless character, or like focus around a homeless character, either as I started like thinking, like, do I really want to tackle stories that deal with like make homeless people like a monster? Because that's not very like good initially. But
yeah. Well,
I think for this story, it still kind of works.
Well, that really gets at this big societal deal, like we have with the poor, and it's it's sad. It's the issue of these people scare us because we could become them kind of deal. They're the ones that that at least over here in America, politicians are demonizing these people that are so poor that they need government assistance, and don't give that guy on the street corner any money because he's just going to take it and go buy alcohol, which was actually what I was going to do with it as well. But we're not to cast judgment toward me, kind of deal like that. They're maybe, I don't know. Let's go deep on this and say that maybe there are insecurities, maybe there are fear of failure. Not saying that people in these situations ended up by any wrongdoing of their own, but
just like either things that were unfortunately like they're stuck in a situation that they can't, like it's very hard for them to get back up off their feet, or like just stuff like that, or the system itself failing them.
Yeah, they're a reminder. They're a reminder of what we could become.
Yeah. And that's also kind of what like sometimes horror and not creepypasta specifically, but like what the horror genre kind of does is brings those things to light. To like, they may treat them as monsters, or they may treat them, or like have them like be the victims of monsters and stuff like that. That's to kind of show like that real world commentary kind of thing.
Yeah, we use the
much like sci-fi. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say we use the monster in film, maybe subconsciously as a fear of the other. Like somewhere in my college experiences in a film class I took, I remember a professor pointing out that in times of war and strife that you have more monster films coming out because it's an issue of you have us against this otherworldly, like totally alien thing, and then when in most stories the good guys beat the quote-unquote monster, then it's just a reassertion of our society's values. Yeah,
exactly. And it's just also kind of like how sci-fi is very much a can commentate, I guess that's a word, maybe, on social issues and stuff. Like you can have like robots and like being like rebelling as like something in the society, rebelling. Like it's the same thing with horror and stuff. So like with horror, it's just a little bit darker.
Yeah.
I'm
working on something with Carney, so if you ever want to start doing Carnuary, well, no, that's too bad of a pun. I don't know if you could justify that, but
we could do it. I love the gimmicks and the the punny things. So Carnuary, just do it in February.
Yeah.
Oh God,
that would be great.
Carnies. That's another like clowns, and that's another fear I can touch on from my childhood.
We call them scars, sir.
Yeah. But yeah, I think we've touched a lot on what can be said about the story and like what fodder can be used from it based off our original like conversation back at Gen Con.
Yeah.
I think yeah, at the end of the day, I totally recommend the story.
Oh yeah.
For if nothing else, it's a good read, and it's like it's very thought provoking, kind of like a Twilight episode or an Outer Limits episode. And this fodder, as soon as you said that you're using it for a Delta Green game, and I read it, and I was like, yep, this is Delta Green. And then we've come up with a bunch of other ideas for it for other systems. So
yeah, the Delta Green thing, it ends on a dang Delta Green note when you end Bob's narrative, because hey, he just committed murder and he made a few phone calls and it's swept under the rug, and there's no mention, there's no repercussions, there's no anything. How many places can you work at where you walk in and go, hey guys, I just shot somebody in the face a bunch of times, and they're like, we're on it.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, one of the notes I don't think I touched on earlier. I just remember this quote. He told me a few memorable stories from that period in his life, but ingrained habits die hard. He never named the agency and always used nicknames for his colleagues. I've put together some clues, and I think I could take a guess at what agency it was, but I don't really know. It's one with a green triangle. I think it's called Delta Green. It was literally my comment at the very beginning of the story. It's just it just rolls back to our gaming roots.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of creepypastas I've read, and this is the first one that I actually created a PDF and wrote notes in the margins on. So it's definitely got my
nice
seal of approval.
Yeah. All right, I think then that is probably about it for tonight. So,
sounds good.
So Adam, by all means, this is the point where I'll go into my outro and stuff, but you can promote the Roleplaying Exchange and anything else you're doing right now.
Okay, appreciate it. So those of you interested can find us at I don't even know my own address. You can find us at roleplayingexchange.com. We also have a Facebook page, facebook.com/The Roleplaying Exchange. Don't type in Roleplaying Exchange flat out, because it's actually a different type of role playing, and it involves a safe word. So that's not us.
Oh,
just say it.
I know that I've had a few issues actually, because I've had to Google find your page by Googling it, and I always get some weird either the username cannot be found, and so I had to type in the Role Playing Exchange.
We also have an issue where role playing is actually they're two separate words, but we kind of combine them in, so it messes with things a little bit. We also have a Twitter account. We're at RPX, all capitalized, and then the rest of it's exchange, so at RPXchange. And we also have a Patreon running. So if you like what we're, the actual plays and the RPG talkie episodes where we just discuss different elements in RPGs, that sounds really professional, the way I described it, then, please come over there, check it out. We have an extra Patreon-only show called Beyond the Wall Patreon, where we talk about everything from video games to anime to stuff that I don't really feel comfortable broadcasting on your podcast because it gets a little racy.
Fair enough. Yes, because our show is so PG.
I meant to ask earlier if I could use fuck, but I went ahead and used it
for sure
twice now. So
yeah, yes.
But yeah, I appreciate it. I was excited when we had this conversation at Gen Con, and I've been looking forward to it. And thank you for having me on the show. Yeah,
no, for sure. I'm a fan of your podcast as well. I've basically been keeping up on most of the podcasts that have come out of Roleplay Public Radio of our little fan base of that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I got onto yours I think from the start with the Fear Itself game.
Ooh, right. That was actually
the LARPing.
That was the first game I ever ran in my life.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, and I've loved all the Cthulhu games, the Red Markets, 10K Lakes games.
Well, thank you.
I think my favorite one is probably not to fanboy over something, but is probably the Pleasure Cruise one. It was a Joel's. It was for Red Markets. It was a Joel's game.
Ooh, there's been a couple of those.
It was on Lake Superior.
Oh, good Lord! Yeah, that was dark. That was a good one.
Yeah, I that one was definitely very dark, but like the payoff at the very end, like damn.
And that was my co-host Chris that was running that game, and when you're thinking of dark, depressing horror, like Chris has got that down to an art. Like he makes every decision painful.
Yep. Yeah, he makes you work for those the extra points that you need for, like the will points in the game and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And makes you work for that for every bounty in that game. But even aside from those, like the Delta Green games you run, I've been entertaining.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to listening to this one to the new one for based off the story, because
I can't wait to share it.
Yeah. And yeah, 100%. If you guys like actual play games, like listening to people play role-playing games and recording them, by all means, check out the Roleplaying Exchange. It has the Cultist seal of approval.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. And so yeah, if you like what you heard here, if you didn't like it, regardless, send us a comment in the comment section below where this gets posted, whether it be on QB6, Facebook, YouTube, or Tumblr. We're on iTunes as well, so leave us a rating and review. Help us spread like a memetic virus. I'm on Twitter at Review Cultist. That's basically our podcast's kind of go-to Twitter account. Mm-hmm. And you can also send us emails at aldenterigamortis@gmail.com. That's aldenterigamortis@gmail.com. Where you can also leave us suggestions for other creepypastas you'd like to discuss on the show. If you have other ones from Reddit No Sleep or any of the other sites that store creepy stories from online, let us know. And if you'd like to check out the title cards for each episode, you can check it out on crazonstudios.tumblr.com, crazon.deviantart.com, or on our YouTube channel, Al Dente Rigamortis, where you can check out the videos of each episode. And if you'd like to help support our show, you can go to Patreon, look up Al Dente Rigamortis, and select the backer tier you'd like to support us at. Depending on the $2 to $5 tier that we have special episodes such as Al Dente Real Talk, where we talk about videos and films that either were the inspiration for creepypastas, were adapted from creepypastas, or share like similarities in like genre and subgenre of horror and creepypasta-esque motifs. And then we have Actual Play Rigamortis ourselves, where we, the usual co-hosts, record games of tabletop variety, usually horror-themed and creepypasta-based or inspired. And we also have two from my co-hosts, Al Dente Reloaded and Al Dente Revelations, where they read the stories that they were not privy to and have their own opinions and see if there's any revelations to be had from listening to our former episodes that they were not in, and also butcher the artwork. And to our patrons that are already helping support the show, thank you immensely. You're helping keep those hosting bills at bay, and we very much appreciate that. And to the listeners and the authors of each story, thank you immensely, because, well, without listeners, we wouldn't really have much of a show, and without the authors, we definitely wouldn't have a show without the stories. So, thank you immensely. Until next time, I have been your host, Review Cultist.
And I'm Adam from Roleplaying Exchange.
And this has been Al Dente Rigamortis. Sleep well.
Night.